All right, I'm back. Kicked on my stream, and everything's looking okay.
I sent you some other links, just file folder 1, 2, and 3, and there's like anywhere from 10 to 6 pictures in each one. Should be able to get the pictures easier. I just tried to send too many at one time, I think.
Okay. Let me go try that. Let me go check that out. Cool. All right. I'm gonna kick on my music, and I'll do my show startup stuff, and then we'll get into it.
Okay, man.
All right. Talk to you in a minute.
Hi, you're listening to the Meadows and Makers podcast with Making Stuff and Jack Dunn. Making Stuff and Jack Dunn. Making Stuff and Jack Dunn.
Trust me.
You're listening to Meadows and Makers podcast
with Jack Dunn and Making Stuff. Peace.
Hi, you're listening to the Meadows and Makers podcast with Making Stuff and Jack Dunn. Making Stuff and Jack Dunn. Making Stuff and Jack Dunn.
Sorry about that, guys. All right. Welcome to another week of the Meadows and Makers podcast. Thanks for that heads up, Rondon. Sorry about that. Didn't get my timing just right, so I'm a pretty bad DJ. So I'm working on it, though. This got me a little tripped up with the new ads before the shows. So that's cool, but I just wasn't watching my time that good. So yeah, shame on me. Yeah, Steam Qua. Shame on me. So I'm Greg, aka Making Stuff, here on Steam It, and this is the Meadows and Makers podcast. If you're a first time listening in here, just a shout out to everybody that's come to hang out for the show today. We got Crimson Clad, we got Mama Monza, we got Peachy Mod, we got Rondon, we got Soundwaves Photon, we got Steam Qua, and thank you guys for hanging out today. I really appreciate you guys showing up for the show. every week, and most of you guys every week, and then whoever else is listening out there on mspwaves.com and VimTV. Today's show, we're going to be doing a lot of dang, man, we lost the stream and I'm back. Okay. Oops. We got a little bit of encoding overload happening there. So let me change my output stream settings here to let me crank them down just a little bit, just because we're doing something a little different today. So let me see if that helps with all that stuff. So hey, thanks guys for coming to hang out. Crimson Clad, it just said she got a beta fish, so talking aquaponics. Yeah, we're talking aquaponics today. We got returning guest Robbie Olson coming back on today. We got a Zoom call, so if you guys are out there and watching or hanging out in the Discord here, it may be better to deafen yourself in the Discord and then listen on mspwaves.com or on VimTV and see some of the stuff that you can see Robbie's pretty face and some of the presentation that we're going to work through today. He's got a presentation worked up on the beginning of getting an aquaponics system started and some of the stuff to think about and some cool pictures and all that kind of stuff. So we're gonna do that today. We're gonna try that out. Kind of a first thing for me. Maybe trying that out. And let's see. Yeah, Rondon, I don't know. Let's see. To fix the encoder overload. I don't know if I'm gonna try to. If it's let me see if I can mess around with that in a little bit. But let me get through some other stuff here. Just before we start the show, the views and opinions that are expressed on this show are my own and those of my guests, and they do not reflect on MSP Waves and this interactive social media broadcasting that they have going on here. And so thank you all for being here. Another thing that I like to kick my show off with is a show mantra is something I hold in my heart and just gotta try to spread, is that I will be an inextinguishable light of possibilities for myself and others. And it's just a little mantra that I hold in my heart to kind of keep moving forward in a positive direction. And I think that if we all focus on the positive things that we can do and keep pushing for the future that we want to see and be the change that we want to see in the world, then cool things can happen, and we can kind of move towards a more positive future. So that's what I'm going for. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and bring on my guest if he's all ready. Let's see, Robbie, you there and you ready?
Well, I'm here. Just kind of put this together real fast. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but we're going to give it a shot.
All right. So yeah, we got Robbie Olson coming on as returning guest, and like I said, if you guys want to go and listen in on VimTV or on MSP Waves and watch what's going on with the Zoom, that might be a little better. I'm going to put some of the pictures in. I'm going to drop them in on the Discord, so if you are just hanging out in the Discord, that you're not totally lost. I'm going to do my best with that, and then we'll just kind of see how this goes and go from there. Today, this week, I was helping out Robbie build a fence, and so didn't have a whole lot of prep this week. So we're going to go with the flow.
Out there in the heat.
Yeah, the thing about it is it's hot. Oh, another a lesson learned from this week, a personal lesson learned, health tip, is if you're ever dealing with creosote, make sure you wear some good gloves, and don't wipe that stuff on your body.
Don't wipe it on your face like somebody we know. I did that. wiped the sweat off my face, and man, my face has been on fire for the last day and a half. So
Yeah, my skin is finally like starting to heal up, I think, a little bit. So yeah, don't get that stuff on you at all. It's not any fun.
yeah, if you're doing any kind of homesteading, inevitably you're going to run across a Chris O post. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, probably. So yeah, just don't mess around and wear some good protective clothing for that. So all right, so like I said, today we're gonna be talking some about aquaponics, and Robbie's got a presentation he's got put up here, and I'm gonna switch my screen over to the Zoom meeting. So if you're listening in and you're a little lost and confused on what's happening, then tune in to the Zoom and or tune into the website, and you'll be able to kind of see what we're talking about a little better. And then, like I said, I'm gonna work to drop some files down in here as we're talking. So yeah, Robbie, if you want to,
you're gonna drop files into Discord, some images into Discord while we're going along.
Yep.
Right. I'm gonna drop them into Zoom here, and but I don't think I have the bandwidth to do both Zoom and Discord. So
yeah, just roll with your presentation here, and then yeah, I'm gonna be dropping those files in there.
Let me close my internet windows completely in order to maximize my bandwidth transition here. But okay, so I don't know if you guys probably not new to this. If you listened to this show before, I've been on here a time or two, and we've talked about aquaponics. I won't go into any of the history stuff that I have before, but aquaponics really it's just a mixture of hydroponics and aquaculture. And so we had questions come up before, like what kind of nutrients do you add, and this, that, and the other. And the idea is to let the fish create the nutrient for you for the plants, and then let the plants filter the water for the fish, so that you get your farming of your plants, and then you also get your protein for the fish. So if you're in a situation, well, not even if you're in a survival situation, we've noticed that it's good just to grow our own food. So
Absolutely.
And so on the Zoom here, I'm showing a here. Let me hold on. I didn't hit record. Okay. Here you can see a typical hydroponic lettuce farm. It's huge. The problem with the hydroponics is that they have to add the chemicals, and the chemicals, due to the nitrogen cycle, are going to off-gas, and at a certain point, they're going to become unviable, and you have to change it out pretty frequently, and you're still attached to the system that way. And then same way with aquaculture, where they use chemical or mechanical type filtration systems and don't have the plants involved. So, like we've said before, with the aquaponics, it's all organic. You don't have any GMOs, no pesticides. And one of the big things that Greg and I have talked about is getting a decentralized food source, so that you're not dependent on a food truck running to the grocery store. And aquaponics can help you do that. So I know you've got some thoughts on that subject there, Greg.
Yeah. So that's one of the big things that's one of the big reasons why I got into aquaponics is I saw it as just a really great way of having a localized, abundant food production. And so, that's why I got into it in the beginning. And I really see it as a way, once you get it dialed in and kind of get your systems set up to handle, you go through the winter time and everything like that. I know you're further along in developing that kind of stuff, and then you'd be really resilient, and so less likely for other people to tell you what they want you to do, to be manipulated and stuff. So.
Well, yeah, and I can't emphasize enough the difference in the health benefits of growing your own food, whether you do it in aquaponics or whether you do it in soil beds, provided you don't use, the pesticides and the stuff for your soil bed, then you're going to eliminate a lot of. If you get out there and you do any kind of research, just a little bit of research, you'll start to see that there's a lot of health problems that pop up with the way the food supply is manufactured and shipped out, sent, and so a lot of our health issues in our society today is directly related to our food source.
Right.
Another aspect of the aquaponics is that it uses so much less water
right.
than conventional.
Right. I know one of my previous guests is Breezen. She's from South Africa. Right now, she said that they've been going through about a 7-year drought, and I think in areas where you may have high risk of drought, aquaponics is a great growing technique.
Right, because you're recycling the water over and over and over. Now it will evaporate out. If you have heat, or the plants themselves will respire water out into the atmosphere, but it's a whole lot more economical on the water to recycle it like that than to just pour it on the soil and let it go away, because once it's gone that way. It returns back to the aquifer or wherever it's going. And of course you get like I said, you get your vegetables and your source of protein all in one system. Of course now organic eggs is probably the best source of protein you can get, but next to that's going to be fish. So.
Okay. Yeah, because the omega-3s and all those good fats in there.
Right. And there's a book out called Voltage is Healing by Dr. Tennant. And he goes to the omegas. You got to have 3, 6, and 9. And the only thing that provides that would be either fish or, ironically, hemp. So
really,
that's the only way we get that. Yeah. Well, I mean, you can get the 3s, you can get omega-3s from other sources, but the 6 and 9, usually 9 times out of 10 is going to come from a fish or hemp. And so far, omega-9, I've only found that with the hemp, but yeah, the fish are definitely a big part of that.
Okay.
So anyway, I've got a picture of my fingerling tank up here on the Zoom, so you can see the kind of density that I was doing here, that I'm doing with smaller fish. And these fish get a lot bigger, and we have to move over into IBC totes from here. But this is the kind of density that I deal with on a routine basis. If you're first starting out, you would take one of those tanks and cut it in half, and that would be your entire system, because you don't want to have too many. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, I was just asking, those are those a couple of 50-gallon aquariums, or?
Yeah, these are 2
gallon?
50-gallon aquariums. There's a couple of 100 fingerlings in there, and they're probably 2 inches long apiece. So that's pretty dense, and of course that's just the fingerling tank. That doesn't include what I have on my system. But if you're starting out, don't go overboard with the number of fish. I show this just to show you the kind of potential that you have once you get up and running. So, and of course everybody loves to see the fish. Like I was saying before, you people come out and visit my place, and the first thing the kids do is stick their hands in the tank, want to pet the fish. It's funny. It's funny to watch the kids. They just light up. But,
Yeah.
Okay. Before I get into the nuts and bolts here of this sort of thing, do we have Discord questions?
I'm not seeing any Discord questions coming in so far. So
Okay, I don't even have Discord open on my setups. I don't know what's going on. You think that we ought to start out with the grow bed thing, or let me just continue with this presentation, or see, I can.
yeah, we just continue with the presentation. If you guys have any questions in the audience, feel free to ask some questions. I know I'm posting some of these pictures in there, and they're a little out of sync with what's going on in the on the Zoom call or on the presentation. So yeah, if there's anything that I'm posting that you guys have any questions about, feel free to ask them, and then we'll try to field them as we go here, and then kind of just move along with this presentation.
Okay, so this is in this presentation that I have, because this is the one that I had worked on for the local community college up here, and I just threw this in here. But here's the system that I have under, or a picture of the system that I have under construction, and it's a real basic setup. What you've got is you've got 2 IBC totes.
Yep.
And you've got 3 50-gallon drums. And if you'll look, I don't know if you can see my cursor down there, but you see the cursor moving. That pipe is coming out of the 2 IBC totes on the drain system, and it drops into the bottom of the first tank, which is the swirl tank.
Okay, and that's where the water enters and is pulling the solids from the fish tanks, and the swirling action is allowing the solids to fall.
Here in a minute.
Okay.
I'm just kind of doing a general overview, and then we'll go into the detail side of it. But all right, so what you have is 3 tanks here. You've got a solids tank, a biofilter tank, and then a settling tank that does like the final small solids that drop out before it gets into the main system. So you have 2 fish tanks. The water exits the fish tanks, it goes into the filtration tanks, and then goes over into the grow beds, which here I'm showing a picture of the grow beds under construction just to show you how basic it really is. This is just some frame construction stuff that I built with 2x4s and plywood, and then I'll come back and put a food grade liner in this, and then put pH neutral gravel. And if you'll look at the end of these grow beds, you'll see this big long tank with black plastic draped over it. That is the sump tank in that particular system that I have there.
All right. Yeah. So that's where the water ends up at the very end.
Water drains out. Yeah, right, correct. So, and here are some pictures. The upper left here is the mama fish spitting out babies, and this is just to kind of give you a showing of how the system produces, because you can see you got strawberries over here on the right, and this large plant right here is one of those those oriental lettuces, and over here we've got romaine on the bottom. So the stuff really grows well.
Once you get everything dialed in, and that's amazing. That's incredible growth. How far along were you in the growing to get to that point? Like, how long did it take to produce that much kind of growth?
This growth that you're seeing right now on here is about 6 weeks.
Wow.
Once it's dialed in, it really grows rapidly. And the thing that you'll discover about aquaponics, once you start growing and eating the food that comes out of there, you go to the grocery store and buy tomatoes or lettuce, it just doesn't have the same flavor because the nutrient is not there. The mineral content that you get off the aquaponics is a lot better than the mineral content you would get from the grocery store stuff.
Yeah, you can taste flavor difference.
You can taste the difference. There's a flavor difference because there's a lot of micronutrients in there that are not present in some of the commercial stuff. So
there's a good campaign slogan for aquaponics: taste the difference.
taste the difference. There you go. Right. So, and like I show in some of these pictures, you can see this big elephant ear here. That's one of the smaller ones. We got one on the other side of the greenhouse there where it's just 3 times that size, but I don't think I have a picture of it here.
Yeah.
And then you can take the overflow systems, or not even overflow. You could just put a pump down in there and use that to water your dirt beds or your soil beds.
Yeah.
And so we're showing here that we have 3 soil beds being fed by the aquaponics, and you can just look how lush and green that is.
Yeah.
So those really feeds.
So did you set those up as like a wicking bed type system, or is it just raised beds?
No, if you look on the picture here, you'll see that I have a pipe running down the backside.
Okay.
And in the grow bed. And what I do is I have another 50-gallon tank and a pump, and I'll pump that 50-gallon tank full of water. And then I have a timed valve on that tank that will open up and let water flow out.
Oh, okay.
Once or twice a day. Now, I do that because if you hook it directly to the pump, I found, for whatever reason, it burns the pumps out. I don't know why, but the pumps don't last long if you try to pump through these little pipes here, these little feeder pipes.
Yeah.
I guess it's just restricting the flow so much, it's just not going to do it. And the pumps are not very powerful anyway, so it's better to let gravity do the work and just pump the 50-gallon drum full and put the drain release on a timer.
Oh.
Seems to work better.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I've tried some of that stuff with some of the little timers, the automated timers that you can buy at Lowe's or whatever, but I've seen that you have to have some pretty good pressure actually for them to kick on.
Well, I mean, it'll kick on, but because the pressure is not enough the pump doesn't produce enough pressure basically, and what it winds up doing is burning out those little cheap pumps. And you could probably get a $500 or $600 pump that do the trick, but I prefer to keep a little $40 pump and have a couple of them new in a box for reserve and do it that way. It seems to last a lot longer, and we just let nature do the work with gravity anyway. So,
all right, cool.
Okay, so tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to jump out of here. Do you think we ought to go into the nitrogen cycle, or let's just go straight to the build?
So I think the nitrogen cycle is a good thing to understand. It's be a good thing to talk about.
Okay. Well, we'll just continue on with the presentation in the way I did with the local college up here. But basically, the nitrogen cycle is based off of the symbiotic relationship that you have between all of the organisms involved. And you're going to have the fish that are going to consume food, and they're going to produce waste. That waste is then going to collect in a certain area where bacteria are going to then colonize, and they're going to break down that waste into compounds that can be used in the organic system of the plants. So you have here, if you look at the slide, you've got the fish. You have it's showing here that the small fish and animals consume tiny microscopic creatures. Big fish and animals, smaller ones, they create ammonia, and then also ammonia is created through the waste decay of the root systems, but we'll talk about that later. The ammonias then are going to be consumed, if you go around the wheel here, by the nitrobacters and various types of bacteria to create nitrates and nitrites. The nitrites are created first, and then the nitrobacter then consumes the nitrite and converts that to nitrates. Nitrates then are in the water system, and as it goes into the gravel bed, plants then uptake the nitrates and convert that into usable food for themselves. And in the process, all of this process is removing the ammonia, the nitrites, the nitrates. And what's not showing on this page right here is the phosphates. Phosphates are created as well. And then the phosphates get consumed by the plants as well. So it's a symbiotic relationship. And you do have to have certain conditions met in order to make this work, but nature does it perfectly, and we can emulate nature. So, the symbiotic process there, I mean, it wouldn't be possible without the relationship of all of these guys, so.
Right. Yeah. So, I don't know what's going on, but you got some issues with the audio. It's like kind of going up and down a little bit, but
up and down. It may be me moving away from the mic.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah, it sounds pretty good.
Okay, let me move the mic a little bit closer to me and take the screen out of the way. I don't think you're going to get. We don't have to do studio level recording here, so.
All right.
All right. So now is that better?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. Okay. Now the difference between what I teach people to do and what most people see on the internet is this is the basic setup that you see on the internet. You have a tank, a fish tank, and a pump will get slapped in the fish tank, and they'll pump water up to the grow bed and use the grow bed as a filtration system. And the water dumps back into the fish tank. And this is touted as the big way it's done, but there's a lot of inherent problems that pop up with this. It requires a whole lot of maintenance. And if you're going to do this and not want to stick your hands down in nasty stuff all the time, then you'll need to do a different method. So you're going to see this a lot on the internet. If you get out there probing around and you're looking on YouTube, this is the method you're going to see. It's going to be the most common. And this is the thing that I advise people to tread carefully on, because it will get you into trouble. And then you'll think, well, aquaponics is not worth fooling with because this is just a mess.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly how I started off too, because watching all those YouTube videos, they pretty much show you that this is the system to build.
Yeah, and what happens is everybody's all excited, and they film the build and the setup, and then they film the very beginning of it when they have plants and stuff, and it looks like it's working great. What they're not showing you 6 months down the road when they're having to stick their hands down in that muck and clean it out.
Yeah.
So in order to understand why this is not the best setup, let's look at this, the way the grow bed is, and how typically this is the way it's taught, is that you have these zones. You have, if you look on the screen here, you see there's 3 zones. You got the dry zone, which is the top, and it's important also on your grow beds to make sure that your top gravel or media, whatever you use, stays dry. In other words, you don't want your water level getting up too high.
Okay.
If the water is constantly getting the top of the media wet, then algae will grow on the top of the media, and it consumes up your nitrates and your phosphates. It consumes your oxygen, and it's just messy.
Yeah.
So we try to avoid that. But typically, this is the way it's portrayed. You have the 3 zones, and this is correct, except we don't want to have our zone 3, our sludge zone. If you do it the way the previous slide shows, right here with the tank, and then you dump that into the grow bed, then zone 3 becomes so large it overtakes zone 2, and you wind up with the little dry zone, and you jump straight to zone 3, which is the sludge. And that stuff is really nasty. So our goal here is to keep the sludge zone down in the very bottom and don't let it grow.
Okay.
And in order to do that, we need to mitigate a few things. We don't want to dump the fish waste directly in the grow bed. Otherwise, the zone 3 will just grow and grow and grow until it overtakes zone 2.
Okay.
Okay, so we just covered that. So we're going to talk about the nitrogen cycle now to try to understand what's going on in order to avoid these pitfalls. First off, we have to understand that plants only absorb a liquefied or a gaseous state.
All right.
They're not going to, you're not going to throw solid waste down right next to plant roots, and it's not going to be able to handle that. It has to break that stuff down in order to use it. And that's
Okay.
the first thing we have to understand here, is that the plants, they have to have oxygen that they absorb off of the root system. And if you choke it out with solids, then you'll have an anaerobic condition where all the oxygen is being consumed. That will eliminate any plant growth.
Right, and yeah, you'll notice that right away, because you'll just start seeing the plants withering down, and it starts to smell.
Right. Yeah. If you start to get that smell, then you're at the tipping point. So.
Yeah.
So okay. There's several modes of the nitrogen cycle, and if we understand these 4 or 5 modes, then we can understand why we're doing what we're doing. And I'm just going to briefly go over those. I'm not going to dwell on them because it's boring as crap.
Yeah.
People don't want to get into this stuff because they're just like, oh, golly, and they start tuning out. But it's pretty important to understand the different modes so that you can say, oh, well, geez, right now it's absorbing gas, or right now it's emitting gas, or that. And it takes time to learn this, but I'm just going to rush over it real fast because I know people don't want to get into this in any kind of detail in this show. I can go into this in a lot more detail later on, so that if somebody says, well, they want to really understand this, they can get the PDF and go over it and say, well, okay, now I know why this is happening. And
Rock on.
yeah, so first off, we got fixation, and these are the scientific terms. So this is where the nitrogen's absorbed or converted directly from the atmosphere. So your nitrogen gas is absorbed through the leaves, converted to ammonia, and then broke down by the root system and converted into a nitrate that can be absorbed. This happens a lot with what they call nitrogen fixer plants. They'll absorb the nitrogen out of the atmosphere and then convert that to an ammonia and break that down into usable nitrogen. Red leaf clover is a good example of that. So if you've got a place where the soil is dead, and you can't get it to do much, plant a bunch of red leaf clover for a season or two and turn it under every time it grows, and you'll fix your nitrogen problem in the soil.
Okay.
Okay, so mineralization. It's the process where the microbes in the soil will decompose organic material like waste.
Uh-huh.
They pull that nitrogen out from the waste solids, and this happens with any kind of compost. So if you got a compost system set out there, it's going to be a microbe that's breaking that down and converting that solid waste into a nitrate or form of nitrogen that the plant can use. Note down here that the rates of mineralization vary with temperature, moisture, and oxygen content of the media. So obviously, if you have an anaerobic condition, with no oxygen, you're not going to have mineralization.
Right.
And yeah, so all right, nitrification. It's a process where the beneficial bacteria, nitrosomas, convert ammonia to nitrate, and then that's converted into nitrite, and then converted into nitrate by the nitrobacter. So this is what happens in our aquaponics system, because we have a liquefied system. We have ammonia already being produced by the fish, and the bacteria then turn it into nitrate, and then nitrite, and then nitrate.
Okay.
And this is the system we want to occur in our biofilter. But now we can have other systems, if they go south on us and turn into an anaerobic condition, then we'll have some of these other conditions coming up. So here, controlled nitrification. The nitrification, occurs best between 67 and 87 degrees, and this is where the water temperature comes in. And right here, I've got it noted that below 41 degrees, nitrification ceases. And this is because the bacteria goes dormant and dies.
Oh, it'll completely die if it goes below that temperature.
Yeah, exactly. It'll completely die. And so this is why controlling water temperature in an aquaponics system is important no matter what fish you use. Because, you can have people that say, well, we'll just get a cold water fish, for the wintertime, but it doesn't work that way because your filtration will cease.
Yeah. We just had Breeze join us in the audience, and she asked if you want to come live with her in Africa for a bit.
Well, it's a little bit of a drive, and the thing is, it's a long way.
The thing about it is it's a long way away too. Yeah.
So anyway, like the slide shows here, the nitrification is the critical process for our aquaponics.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm showing these slides the way I am and talking about this is because when you're starting your system up and you're going through these things, you're going to see some of these things pop up on you. And in order to not get in trouble with it, then if you know just a little bit about it, you can say, oh, well, geez, this is off gas and I've got a problem over here, or this is pulling nitrogen, and so I know I've got a problem here. It allows you to kind of zone in on where you may have an issue and take care of it, and not be stuck in one of these things where you've got this system that goes septic on you. And did yours ever go septic on you? Did you have one go septic?
I did, yeah. I did.
It's just not pleasant.
Well, the thing I was fighting the whole time was that the solids were building up, and then it just started to my pump started to clog all the time, and I couldn't keep up with it, and so it just led to like that sludge you're talking about. That sludge just built up too much in there. My plants started to wither. The thing smelled horrible, and it just became
to have a way to get
problem.
That out.
Yeah. So Breeze just asked if it can work with sandfish. I'm not familiar with sandfish, so I think as long as it's a fish that if it's a freshwater fish and it can handle a certain temperature range.
Yeah. There's a lot of different fish that people put in these things, and obviously, if you have something like a cold water trout or something, then you're going to have a different filtration method.
Yeah.
But that's not really going to be conducive to aquaponics. So you really have to ask yourself when you're getting into this, what is your purpose? Are you getting into it for the fish? Are you getting into it for the plants? Are you getting into it for both? If you're really after just the fish, like a cold water trout, then focus on the aquaculture side of it and don't worry with the other, because you'll find yourself in a losing battle.
Right.
So, it really depends on your purpose of what you're trying to do versus.
Oh, she was just being funny. She said, wants to breed a fish that can live in sand because they don't have any water.
Oh, sandfish. Yeah, okay. Well, I knew I had never heard of the sandfish, but
yeah, you got me on that one. You got us on that one, Breeze. Good job.
Okay.
That was good. All right. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good. It is a good compliment for soil farming though, because in permaculture, if you're doing permaculture, then you can also use those solids as a way to feed your fruit trees and stuff too.
Well, I tell you what I've discovered too. You're going to have a certain amount of die off on these fish anyway. Some are just going to die, and you can put those in your soil, and it really brings up the quality of the soil for the plants. Because the bacteria in the soil will break down the entire fish, and you've got a lot of nutrient there that the plant can then bring on to. But anyway, getting back to the slide right here, like it says here, we're going to control the nitrification most effectively by controlling the environment so that the following next 3 stages of the nitrogen cycle are done on our terms and not allowed to get out of control.
Yeah.
Because these are the ones that'll get you into trouble. So we got denitrification. And this happens when the nitrogen is lost through the conversion of the nitrates to a gaseous form of nitrogen, such as nitrous oxide. And this is where part of the smell comes from.
Okay.
This will happen when we get a anaerobic bacteria, and the anaerobic bacteria consumes all the oxygen, and then it starts consuming the oxygen molecule out of the nitrogen and converting it to a nitrous oxide gas. So this is one of the things that they have to watch out for with the thing where they add the nutrients in all the time, because the chemical compounds will start breaking down and recombining and turning into gases.
Yeah.
And they have to watch for that. When it gets down to a certain level, they have to dump all the nutrient out and put new nutrient back in, because otherwise, it becomes a hazard.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things that makes the situation go septic on us. So we get an anaerobic bacteria that grows up out of that zone 3 sludge. And then when it starts growing, it takes over everything. And we have to keep it in its own little compartment and in check so that doesn't happen.
Right.
All right, now volatilization. This is the loss of nitrogen through the conversion of ammonia to ammonia gas, and it's the same sort of process. This is usually happens when the solid waste is converted or exposed directly to the air, the oxygen air, and you get a conversion.
Yeah.
So this is why on manures, when you put those down, you have to turn them under immediately. Because if you don't, all the nitrogen is lost to the atmosphere. And that's not anything that's dangerous. It smells bad. But after a little while, you'll walk out there and all of that manure will be dried up. And there's basically nothing left in there but the fiber, maybe, iron or a little bit of stuff that the animal consumed. But all the nitrogen stuff that the plants absorb has been lost out to the atmosphere. So this happens when we have exposed fish solids that start floating to the top of our grow bed, or when you go to dig down to plant something and it just smells awful. That's because the solids are right there under the surface. So again, we're going to mitigate that because we're going to put a squirrel tank in. All right, and the last one is immobilization. And this is where the anaerobic condition has taken over. And because of this, it has all the nutrients locked up. So the the fish, the plants, nothing can absorb any of the nutrients because all of the anaerobic bacteria has changed the chemical structure of the water to make it unavailable for uptake for the plants. And if we have a septic condition, all three of the last three that I just gave you will be there. They'll be prevalent. And we can mitigate that by simply changing the design a little bit and not doing this, what they call a chop and flip, where you just chop the top off of an IBC tote, flip it over, and make a grow bed out of it and pump the water straight out and have the fish in the bottom. We don't want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got somebody in the audience at Myco says that he's doing that kind of stuff today. He said he was building a big greenhouse, but it's just easier to break it down into hoop houses. So that's awesome, man. Glad to hear. Yeah, I've been noticing a lot more people getting into it, or different types of growing methods. So it's great to hear.
Yeah, and there's the beautiful part about this whole thing that I just went over is once you understand those 6 elements, it applies across the board to all organic farming. So you can do that with soil, or you can do it with a soilless medium like aquaponics. Once you understand how that nitrogen cycle is working, we can understand why our plants are doing well or why they're starving for nutrients. So, we just need to get the things under control in our aquaponics so that we don't have a problem. And we're going to do that through the system design, as I said. So let's think about what we just said here. We've got these elements of the nitrogen cycle that we want to control. We're going to do that through the components. And now that we've got just a basic understanding, real basic, once we start talking about the way the systems are set up, we can start to see the pros and cons of how these things are designed and the reason why they're put together.
Yeah. Yeah, understanding the nitrogen cycle is the key concept to understand in the systems.
Right,
because,
and you had talked about in one of your programs about a fellow that said he knew a lot of things, and everybody asked him, well, how do you know all this stuff? And he was just like, well, all I do is understand the basics.
Yeah.
And that's where you have to go to on this. If you understand the basics on this, you can design your own setups and systems, know why they work, and make them thrive.
Exactly.
So, all right, the first one. Now, I got some of these names from a guy named Paul Vanderwerf from New Zealand.
Okay.
And this guy was the guy that turned me on to the filtration systems because I was really struggling trying to figure out how to make these things work without having all this mess. Because like you, the first ones that I did went septic on me pretty quick, and it was a bad scenario. You ever, have a septic tank line out in your yard, start pumping raw sewage out in the yard, then you have an idea of what it's like. Imagine going out there and sticking your hands down in that with a water hose, trying to flush that out and clean it out, because that's what you're doing with a septic aquaponic system.
Right.
So anyway, this basic one he called the Caveman, and it's the chop and flip. This is where you have the fish tank and the grow bed, and there've been several people that have come out and divided the tanks, where they take the fish tank, put it on one side, the grow bed on the other, and they use the same principle as this chop and flip. It's not an IBC tote, it's the same thing, and it's what the guy from Australia that puts out the DVDs calls the chop system.
All right.
So chop means constant height, one pump. The idea here is to have the grow bed at a height that's not real high up because those IBC totes are tall and the grow bed's up high. And so he wanted to make the grow beds lower. And so he just split the systems and doing the same thing. Now, with the nitrogen system we just talked about, what's going to happen here? We're going to pump fish solids out of our fish tank right into the grow bed. It's going to build up because the grow bed is the filter. And then once the filter gets full, you're either going to have to change the filter, clean it out, or do something with it because it's just going to be nasty. And this is, sadly, this is what is promoted all the time on the web.
Right.
So here's our examples. You know, you've got the barrel they use the barrel ponics and the IBC totes, but it's the same thing. And these are the two systems that I built to start with. You can see right here, you've got the same problem. It looks like at the beginning it's doing great. And then over on the barrel ponics, same thing. And, you know, I spent a lot of time and effort putting these things together only to discover that I was screwing it up, you know.
Yeah.
And if you'll look in this one with the barrel ponics here, I've got the wrong stone in there, and I point that out in my manual about how the stone can affect the system as well. Because that was just like gravel you put on your driveway.
Yeah. Limestone or something.
Got limestone. Right, limestone. So that affects the pH, which affects the bacteria, which affects the nitrogen cycle. So.
Right.
Okay. Now, the second most common one, chop 2, constant height 1 pump, or the shift pist, constant height in fish tank. Now, they had to solve this problem because the water in the fish tank was moving up and down constantly. So, in order to solve that, they did this next system, and it's presented as a solution. So let's look at what's wrong with this system. So what do we got? We got a fish tank, we got a sump tank, and a grow bed. The fish tank water dumps to the sump tank, which has a pump in it, and the water's pumped right back to the fish tank. Tell me where the filter is on this. The filter's the grow bed again, but the sump tank is going to gather solids all in the bottom.
Yeah.
Right? And the pump is in there where the solids are. So the solids are now being distributed throughout the entire system. And this guy charges $80 for a DVD to teach you how to build this.
Yeah. Now,
so what's going to happen here? If we look at our nitrogen cycle, this grow bed over here, within 6 months' time, is going to be septic. And the sump tank is probably going to be septic.
Yeah. But you can run for a while until you get there.
You can run for a while. And if you're first starting out and you've got, you know, some sacrificial goldfish.
Yeah.
And you want to try this thing out, you could do that and maybe grow you a couple heads of lettuce. Not be okay if you have just a few fish. But if you've got anything with any kind of volume and you're wanting to grow food to actually eat, enough to eat, to keep your family supplied, then you're going to have to find a better solution than this.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, now they teach this as a way to do it, but they also have an advanced course that tells you how to clean this out. And so they build all this elaborate system where they stick this wand down in the grow bed and flush it out.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's really no need in all that. It's just, it's a lot of extra back-breaking work. It's heavy, it's hard, and it stinks. And you don't even need to do all that if you'll just mitigate it with the next setup. So
yeah.
Now this is what Paul calls the Renaissance man. This is where we add our swirl tank. Now we're starting to understand the nitrogen cycle a little bit better. So fish water dumps into a swirl tank. Now this is just a simple 50-gallon drum, whether it's a cone tank or just a 50-gallon drum, doesn't matter. The idea here is that the solids collect up in the swirl tank. And then the water without the solids then rolls over here to the grow bed where it gets a secondary filtration with a very tiny stuff that escapes the swirl tank gets stuck in the grow bed. By the time the water reaches the sump tank to go back to the fish, it's very clean. You don't have any of the nitrates, any of the nitrites, none of the phosphates, none of the solids, or very little of the solids. I mean, you're going to have some no matter what, but it's mitigated down. So now when you go to clean your system, all you have to do is drain the swirl tank.
Right.
You put a valve at the bottom and drain it out. And now you don't have to stick your hands down in this grow bed down here and clean out nasty sludge.
Right. Yeah. To me, that's one of the advantages as well with aquaponics is trying to be as less maintenance, a lot less maintenance.
Right.
Over
and
a soil
doing it
garden.
the other way, if we back up, if you do either this one or this one, it's constant maintenance.
Right.
Now you're fighting pH all the time.
Right.
And this one right here will help you stabilize pH. It gets the solids out of your way, or the bulk of the solids out of the way. But now we can take this a lot further. Let's go on. So now we're going to add a biofilter in the mix. We're going to put the biofilter in before we hit the grow bed.
Okay.
Now, why do we want to do this? We want to do this because we want to have the biofiltration isolated for the fish, just in case that we need to turn this grow bed off and bypass it. Now we can just circulate right here, and we don't have to worry about the fish dying off on us. We're still going to have filtration going. It also acts as a secondary sediment filter, and it captures tiny little particles that would have got through the swirl tank.
Okay.
Let's move on to the next one. Now, the next one we're going to take it full advantage of the nitrogen cycle, because the last three that were giving us a problem, we're now going to use that to our advantage. We're going to take the swirl tank and we're going to dump those solids over into a mineralization tank. And it's going to sit there, isolated out of the system, with an oxygen stone in it. The bacteria will then consume up all the oxygen and all the solids while they're doing it. And what you're going to be left with is a mineral-rich slurry that you can then either put back in your soil beds or back into your grow bed. And these X's here that I have are representative of valves.
Okay.
So when we do this, now we've got a system that requires very low maintenance and is almost 100% efficient as far as nutrient recycle. We're gonna take the nasty stuff that would normally get thrown away and convert that to mineral slurry that we can then use.
Okay.
Now it'll happen naturally if we want to. You can take the swirl tank solids and you can dump those into a compost bed or even into dirt beds and turn it under, and you will get the mineralization effect. It's just a lot slower. It might take the dirt bed and the bacteria in there might take 4 months or 3 months to break down everything, but the mineralization tank can do it in 15 days if you have the temperature right.
Okay. Yeah. So with the biofilter and the mineralization tank, you need to do another step in there, right? You need to add air.
That's correct. Now, the air, because everything in the nitrogen cycle is oxygen sensitive, right? Because it feeds off of oxygen. The whole reason why the nitrogen is broke down to start with is so it can rob the oxygen molecule away from the nitrogen. So by putting the oxygen stones in, or the air stones in, we're going to feed the bacteria the oxygen that it needs to break this stuff down so that it doesn't become a nasty problem for us. And the bacteria is going to do all the work for us.
Right. And, so that's doing all the heavy lifting in the system and keeping it really, really clean.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if we use this modern man approach, that means that the bacteria that would normally ruin our system or make backbreaking work for us is now working for us, and we're controlling what it's doing. And we can really get explosive, and I mean explosive growth out of a setup like this. So, as a summary here, we're going to use our methods to separate the solids into swirl tanks, are the most common. We're going to utilize a biofilter to break down the bulk of the ammonia before it hits the grow bed. That way, when it gets to the grow bed, we've got nitrogen-rich liquid form that the plants can use. Because remember, the plants can't use solids. They break down everything into a liquid or gas. And we can take that a step further down the road when we start talking about the salts. But by utilizing the mineralization tank, even the anaerobic part of it is not wasted. But we can tightly control where it goes. So the gist of this whole, what we just went through there, is just not to dump those solids directly in the grow bed, because the grow bed can't break down the solids fast enough to keep it from going septic.
Right.
Even if you have worms, and I know that question comes up, what about worms? Well, worms do help. And even with the biofilter in place, still put worms in the grow bed, because the plants themselves, when you take them in and out of the grow beds, little pieces of roots and stuff like that will be in the grow bed, and they will decay and create solid waste of their own. You don't need to compile it and add on the fish waste.
Okay. So those worms are going to go through there, and they're going to try to eat up any of that decomposing matter that's in solid matter that's in the beds.
It's in the grow bed. Right.
Okay. So they're a real benefit, and you use like red wiggler worms in there.
Yeah, now the large earthworms, they don't work as well because they're just not as good with the water, because there's a lot of water. The water goes up and down constantly in those grow beds, and the earthworms don't seem to work as well with that water as the red wigglers do. The red wigglers, they thrive, whereas the earthworms are typically, the population will go down pretty slow until you get to where they're not there no more. They just don't like the water moving up and down for whatever reason. Maybe it's just not enough mud for them or whatever. So I updated this little talk here, because what I did on my system is I added a secondary pump or a third tank. If we go back to here and we're looking at the swirl tank and the biofilter, if I come right out of the biofilter and add another 50-gallon drum as a secondary sump tank, then what that means is that I can now isolate the system and have just aquaculture or just the hydroponic side of it, where it's pulling out of the sump into the grow bed. Now, well, why would you want to do that? Well, in the wintertime, I have my fish tanks indoors in my barn in a room. And before I had them in the greenhouse, and I had an isolated room in there as well. On super cold nights, as we've talked about, we've got to maintain water temperature. So if you can keep the water circulating in a smaller room that's heated, you're not losing all your heat to the atmosphere in the greenhouse or outside or wherever. And this allows you to operate through the wintertime without a whole lot of extra effort.
Okay. Yeah, you can. So you can divert from your grow bed and just use all your tanks to keep the flow going back to the fish tank and keep it clean.
Right, because you have the swirl tank removing the solids. Biofilter is then converting all of the ammonias into nitrates. Now, The thing about it is that you don't want to do this on a long-term basis because the nitrates will build up and phosphates will build up in the system. So you just want to use this as a short-term method to get you past those cold nights or snowy, icy days or whatever. And then when it warms up, you want to immediately let that water flow back to the grow beds because the plants then will consume up those nitrates and phosphates. And then you're back to clean water. But the fish can stand to have some nitrates and phosphates up to a certain level, but it's just it's a protective measure to keep you from letting your biofilter bacteria getting too cold and dying off. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. You're keeping that bacteria alive, and you're keeping it warm, so it doesn't die off.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
and that's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to do if you're in a greenhouse and you're feeding, 5 or 6 grow beds because every time you're moving that water around, the heat's getting lost to the atmosphere. So,
right.
And it also allows you, let's say that you had, for whatever reason, the bell siphon broke on the grow bed. You got to shut off water. Well, you don't want to shut off your entire system. So you'll want to be able to just circulate it with the fish and shut off the grow bed that you're working on. So it just allows you a lot more flexibility.
Yeah. Okay. So we got a couple of comments from the audience. One was from Soundwaves Photon. He says, "You sound a little sad," and I said, "Well, it's probably because you got creosote. It's probably because you got creosote on your face."
Sorry, I'm too tired. I'm just wore out.
Yeah, man, we've been working on some fencing this weekend, and it was real. It's been real hot. It's been real hot, and so they may be worn out a little bit.
The thing about it is, it's been hot.
It's been real hot too. And speaking of hot, Rondon asks, "What is considered too warm in an aquaponics system? Can you go too hot?"
I'm sure you can. Obviously, you don't want to get it too hot where it kills the bacteria off.
Right.
Optimal working temperature is between 75 and 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Now, you can get it warmer than that, but that's the optimal zone.
All right. Yeah, because the fish, the fish aren't going to be able to handle too high a temperature in there too. But
No, they're not.
From what I found, being in Alabama in the summertime, if I put some of that Reflectix bubble foil around my tank, and really, I don't think you can get it. You can get the water hot enough, really, just with the normal temperatures outside. And I mean, we get up to in the hundreds anyway during the summertime. So as long as you do a little something, I think to insulate your tank, you're going to be good.
I've never had a problem with it getting too hot. I can tell you that. I mean, you would have to be running some type of solar water heater in the summertime for it to get too hot, which I never do. I only run the solar water heater in the winter. I've never had that problem because I don't know. Water is a good thermal sink, but I've never had it get up above 100 degrees.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So you're probably pretty good. You don't want it to get crazy hot, but you're probably pretty good. However you set it up. Yeah. So.
Right. So let's before we dive into chemistry here, let me throw some pictures up of let's see if I can share some stuff here.
Oh, hey, so we do have some I don't know, maybe if we want to go into your solution for heating, because we got some questions in about when it's freezing. Rondon, that was a really good question about how hot you can get, and He was asking for Breeze. She's in Africa, and so they have to worry mainly about the heat. So yeah, it was a good question.
Right.
And then we got some questions in from Mykos that's saying, well, what about when it's freezing? How are you handling that?
Well, okay, when it's freezing, let's look at that right quick.
All right.
So can you still see my screen?
Yes, I can still see your screen.
Okay.
Yep.
You see this piece of glass I have up here showing the image right now. So what I did is, and you can find these things anywhere, you can get them free. I had a guy give me a sliding glass door that he took out of his house.
All right.
And I took the thing apart and separated the panes because the interior of it was frosted over with God knows what. Cleaned the glass, and then I bought this aluminum framing from eBay because I had this harebrained idea I was going to build a solar panel, which, let me tell you, that's not a good idea. It's better to buy them. Anyway, so I bought this frame and I decided to use it on this glass. Enclosed the sliding glass door glass with this aluminum frame, and I set it on a piece of plywood. You can see where I'm gauging it right there. So I just marked it out, and I screwed the corners together.
So I'm seeing your screen, but I'm seeing all the pictures together. I'm not seeing any of the particular photos if you've got them chosen.
I'm not understanding why it's doing that. Okay, do you see the picture that I have selected there in the middle?
Negative. All I'm seeing is your
Negative.
all I'm seeing is all of your pictures combined there. So
okay, how's that?
There we go.
Still not seeing it.
That worked.
Okay. All right, so you see it now.
Yeah.
So you can see where I have this aluminum frame and I have this piece of glass. I have this. Okay, I've got some pictures of some tools here, but all right. Now do you see it?
Yeah. Yep, seeing it.
Okay, so you see the full sheet of glass there on the piece of plywood.
Yep.
Okay, so it is changing as I change the pictures. I'm sorry for this, folks. We're doing this on the fly, and we haven't done this before, so just bear with us. So,
yep.
All right, so basically, I used a pipe cutter and some clamps and a drill. You can see here where I've marked out the plywood. And what I did here, the reason why I marked out now, this is one I've made out of black plastic, and I have to put this in there. It's the first one that I made. Black plastic works, but the copper works better. But if you don't have the ability to solder copper, this works good. And if you have a small system, this will work fine for you. So I took this black plastic and basically I popped a line on the inside of my square so that I wouldn't go over and be on my frame. And I started coiling it around. You can see what I'm doing here.
Okay.
And then I just kept going with it, and I'd strap it together, and I had to heat it with a heating gun there, heat gun, to make it conform.
Now is that PEX?
This is one of those old. They used to run the main water lines out of this stuff, and I had a guy give me this too because they wasn't using it no more at the place where he worked. And he said, here, we got this big roll of this stuff, but you can go to Lowe's and buy this stuff, or the box store.
Okay.
Maybe I shouldn't say a name like that, but you can go to the box store and you can buy this stuff on like 100-foot, 200-foot roll. And I think I've got 70 feet or 80 feet here on this thing.
Okay.
And you can see how I'm getting it tied together. And then right here is the finished thing there before I painted it. And you can see where I've poked through the plywood with a valve connector, or not a valve connector, but a
90
female 90 right there.
Yep.
So next, I'm going to paint it. Oh yeah, and these things right here, they just slide in. These are compression. So you don't have to have any specialized skill to put this thing together. As long as it's under a piece of glass. Let me rotate this. All right.
Okay, so you painted the plywood black.
Painted the plywood black, and I mounted the glass down on there, and then ran screws through the bottom into the aluminum. Okay, so that's the end of that, but you can see what that is. And
Yep.
I ran water through this system during the wintertime. What I did is I set a pump down in the sump tank. Now, you could put it in the fish tank if you want to, but the problem with putting it in the fish tank is you're probably going to pick up solids that would normally drain out the swirl. So if you'll do it in the sump tank, the secondary sump, or the main sump, whichever one you want to heat, and have the thing set up with a solar panel with a DC pump.
Okay.
And when the sun comes up, the pump starts working, and it pumps water through this. Now, it's not going to be hot when it comes out of here. You're not going to have steaming water. It's only going to be like a degree or two warmer than the water is pumping from. But over the course of the day, it'll raise that water temperature up.
Okay.
And this is far, far more effective than using electric water heaters. I have used up to 2,000 watts before just on one fish tank and set of filters. And it took forever, I mean a day or two, to get just a few degrees up at it because it's exposed to air. But this thing would, just within a matter of hours, would have it up into the 70s range. So this is the best configuration you can get. And it's really automated if you set it up that way. Now, you know, I wouldn't run it in the summertime, like I said, but in the wintertime when it's cold, just put it on there and let it run automatic. It'll keep your water nice and toasty warm. And the water is a good thermal sink as well. It'll maintain that temperature if you have it in a good insulated tank.
Okay, so there's a question in the audience about how are you said that you're using a DC pump tied to a solar panel to power the pump that's going to circulate this water through this piping and everything.
Right, you can get what's called a bilge pump.
Okay.
And it's made for boats.
Okay.
And it run off either 12 volt or 24 volt. Most of them run off of 12 volts.
Okay.
So you can just buy you one of those small solar panels that'll put out enough wattage to run it. And you could have the thing, you could rig it up on a photo switch if you wanted to, but there's really no need in that. Just put a diode in it. And when the sun comes up, it starts generating enough power, the pump kicks on. When the sun goes down, it kicks off. Now, obviously, if you have a freezing cold day, it may or may not work, and you probably would not want to run it on a freezing cold day anyway, because then you're going to be losing heat rather than gaining it. Not freezing cold, but if you have a day where it's like snowing, there's no sunshine, because it's the solar radiation heating up the interior of this thing that does the magic. And all you have to do is, I know everybody out there has went out in the yard and turned on the water hose after it's been laying out in the yard for a few hours and turned it on and felt that hot water coming out of there.
Yeah.
This is the same principle.
Right. So
I mean, you could literally put a water hose in this thing if you wanted to.
Right. So so Maikos has another question. He's doing this kind of thing, he says, and he's asking how many watts of a solar panel do you need to run the bilge pump or whatever pump that you're using? I'm guessing it's dependent on how many volts and amps that pump is using, and you want to size.
That's right. It's
you want to size your solar panel based on that.
That's right. Most of them will work. You know, they have some low wattage ones. You could get some in the 40, 60 watt range. Some of them are in the 100 watt range. So it really depends on the amp draw of the particular pump. But you don't have to have a large panel. But
Right. Yeah.
solar panels have come down in price so much now that it would behoove you to go ahead and buy like a 250 watt panel.
Yeah.
And because any extra that you have, you can dump it over to a battery.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's one of the things I talk about is the beauty if you have a few people that are around you. To go in on a pallet of a bulk panel order, and then you can split it up between yourself and the other people that are working on their projects, and you can save money on panels that way.
Right.
So that's a tool to use. So let's see. We had another question in the audience here from Rondon that's asking. Can you use a thermal difference to drive this process as well? A differential heat. Can you use a differential heating to pump this? I'm guessing he's asking maybe something, maybe like a thermosiphon. Yeah.
Yeah. Now on those cold days, say you've got a blizzard coming in. I had a wood heater in my greenhouse, and yes, you could hook this thing up to a thermal siphon, but you wouldn't necessarily need this panel for that. On your thermal siphon, you'll just wrap copper tubing around the output pipe of your wood heater. And you can pump water through it, or you can thermal siphon it, either one, and not use power. The thermal siphon, you have to be careful and make sure that you're using all metal piping, because I made the mistake on a thermal siphon one time of coupling it to a PVC pipe coming out of the fish tank. I had the bright idea that I would connect up to the ball joint at the bottom of the IBC tote, and just run that up through the thermal siphon, and it did work, but it melted the pipe.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we've experienced that the hard way myself. Myself and my dad came up with a way to do a heated shower at our family's cabin, and we took one of those. It's a metal hose, but it's got a plastic liner on the inside, and we wrapped it around our wood stove, and it does run until you run out of water, and then it starts melting the plastic and
melting the plastic. I mean, the water got so hot down there where it was tied in, it was unbelievable. And I was like, whoa, I got to turn this off. And
so that is another alternative if you live in an area where it is going to get, you're going to get some snow, and you don't want to maybe do the solar heating thing, or if you want to even supplement it with some kind of other system.
I would advise doing both. I would supplement it with a thermal siphon. Because you can't run the thermal siphon all the time, and why waste all that solar radiation on those sunny days? So,
right, yeah. So you could use a wood stove with a metal pipe, copper. Use like some copper tubing, and then run your pump up through that, or and then just heat your water that way to come into your fish tank as well.
Right. So I was just zooming through here to see what I could find. We've talked about heating the water here. I can show the way I have built some of my grow beds here.
All right.
And this is one of my first generation. I've revised some of this and made it a little better since then, but basically I just took 4x4 post, and I built a small floor system out of 2x4s on 12-inch center, and then connected them, this little floor system, to these 4x4 posts, and then built the plywood floor. You can see here it's under construction. This works pretty good, but I've made some revisions to some of it. Let me see if I can get to a better area of this.
All right. Yeah, great questions in the audience. Mike Host, thank you so much for those questions. in Rondon. Really good stuff. Let's see. We got. He's asking. My coach just is asking if you're using PVC pipes for your grow beds, and well, that's good that we're transitioning into talking about this. He's actually building some framed raised beds, pretty much, or they're media beds where he's going to put gravel into them. So,
right. So, can you see the full screen right now, or are you seeing those little pictures?
I'm seeing the little pictures right now, but it could be a little bit of a delay. So, on my end, so when you're selecting a photo and it's coming up, there might be a little bit of a delay.
Here it is. Okay, now you should be seeing the large.
Yeah.
Share. Okay, so now you're seeing the large pictures.
Yep. Seeing them.
Okay, so I want to point out something right here on these little corners because we're going to get into this here in just a minute. Now, these posts right here, I went to a local electrical supply house, and got a bunch of free pallets. And they had these pallets made out of oak. So I tore these pallets apart and got these pieces of oak out and used them as legs on the system. So it's a way to get some free materials if you're on a restrained budget. But if you're going to do that, even if you're using store-bought stuff, these bolts right here, remember us talking about loading? We were talking about frame rest loading the other day, and we were talking about your project.
Right.
Well, because we don't have a frame rest on this, we have to really secure it in. So there's a lot of weight on these things. So drill some holes and put some lag bolts in. Don't mess around with putting a few nails in there, because nails are going to bend and this thing's going to pop apart on you.
Yeah. Yeah. So use some good
you can
good size lag bolts
together. Yeah, nail the floor system together or screw it together with deck screws, but lag it to the post, and that way you won't have any issues with it. And this right here is a perfect illustration of what I'm doing.
That's a really good photo of showing what's going on.
So I've just built this little floor system. I've leveled it up and put it on my legs right here. And then as we go through the system here, you can see what I've done. I just put a top cap on, put plywood on the floor. The system is lagging here. It's running slow for some reason. Okay, and then I started putting sideboards in, and you can see where I got this picture here to show where I put a 2x4 backer in there just to have the bottom of the the plywood to catch something.
Okay.
And again, you see that corner post right there. That's a piece of oak that I got off a pallet.
Okay, so the bottom is all that 2x4 framing, like you would build like a deck or whatever with.
Right, and it's just this floor system right here was back the way I was showing before with the framing, and I've just put the plywood on it. Did I go too fast? Do I need to back up off of that?
Maybe back up a couple and
okay. How's that one right there?
That's good. Yeah. So you got your 2x4 framing at the bottom there, and then you just put 3/4 inch plywood on the top of that.
Don't use 1/2 inch. Use 3/4 and use actual plywood. Don't use OSB. The OSB and the particle board, if it gets wet or damp, it wants to come apart, whereas this stuff is a lot more resilient. So,
right, because you're going to be pumping water into this area, and then you're going to have X amount of stone in there as well. It's going to be pretty heavy.
You're going to have a food grade liner, but it may get damp in the process and the humidity of the system and everything. And it's not right here on top where you have the problem. It's on the bottom.
Okay.
The bottom of the system, because the humidity and water, you got water flowing around. OSB will start to peel on the bottom. Whereas if you take plywood and just spray some primer paint or something on it, it does great.
Okay. So just primer it.
Yeah, I just put some primer on there, and I don't show any primer right here on this. I do have another thing showing me primer and some stuff, but it's not in this group. I'm sorry for being so hoarse. I'm losing my voice for some reason here.
Oh, no worries, man. If you need to take a drink or whatever, you can take a drink. We got plenty of
Yeah, if you could
comments
talk
and
for
stuff
just a second,
here.
let me grab some water. That would be great.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we got some good comments in the audience. We got Maiko saying that she's gonna got 12 kids, man. So heck yeah, you need to work on some aquaponics to keep everybody fed. It's definitely one of those things too that is you can really get your family involved with this project, and everybody can learn together on all the different. I mean, it's a great way to teach like chemistry, and then you got biology, and you got all kinds of things going on with this system. And I also saw that Soundwaves Photon, maybe I can wolf at Making Stuff's farm. That's going to be a possibility, I believe, in the future, man. I'm working towards, getting a permaculture farm established and getting everything set up so that I can build some hobbit houses and running a little permaculture farm there, and having an aquaponics going and everything off grid. And it's working there slowly, but just got started, and that's gonna be happening. So, also, I don't know if anybody else in this audience is headed that way, but I may be doing a live stream from Anarchadelphia this next weekend. I bought my tickets. I'm headed to Philadelphia for Anarchadelphia, and so if anybody out there is maybe heading that way, then I'd love to meet up with you guys. If anybody's thinking about heading that way. But I'm going to try to capture an interview with, if there's any Philistinians that are out there. I'm going to try to maybe sit them down for the podcast next Saturday at the conference. So I'm going to try to broadcast from the conference while I'm there during the same live show time. But if for some reason I can't make the live show, I will be attending that conference in Philadelphia, and so next week I may or may not be here. So just letting everybody know that up front.
Wow, so you're going to a STEAMIT conference next week?
It's not going to be a STEAMIT conference, but it's going to be for people in the liberty community and the freedom community. It's an anarcho-capitalist convention that's going to happen in Philadelphia. It's the first one that's going to happen there in Philadelphia anyway. It's the very first conference that's going to be held in Philadelphia in the United States, and so I bought my tickets, and I'll be heading to that next Thursday. So,
wow, cool.
Yeah. So I'm gonna actually be presenting some of the topics. Well, I'm gonna try to. I'm putting a presentation together to talk about the solar trailer and everything off grid and aquaponics there, and try to network with some of the other guys that are doing similar things like that at the conference. So
Hang on a second, Greg.
All right, cool. Yeah, great. We got some great pictures. Somebody posted a little Mariano posted a photo of I guess that's pepper plants or some kind of plants growing under some indoor lighting. He's got a little PVC frame there, and got some plants growing inside with some lighting. That's a really neat setup, Mariano. I like it. Let's see. You also got what looks like some Zipgrow towers there too, or something else built on PVC that looks like it's all hydroponically grown. So that's pretty cool. So got some really great photos in the audience. We got Maikos saying that he's really loving the show. Let's see. Really appreciate it, guys. let's see. Yeah, Mariano's. Looks like you're into some good hydroponic growing techniques there. I dig it, man. Yeah. All PVC. It's amazing what you can do with a bunch of PVC fittings and hydroponics and all that kind of stuff enables you to grow inside. And so, in my opinion, it's something that's really important it's a really important skill to pick up, especially with the changing in our system, I believe, on Earth and in our local solar system as well, is that we might be going through some changes, and possibly the sun is going into solar minimum. So I believe that it's going to be important for people to be able to grow in different ways instead of traditional farming.
Yeah, I think the importance of water conservation is going to go up, not down, in the future. So, and I'm sure, I mean, that the girl you were talking about that's from Africa, I'm sure she's already in that mode where she's having to do everything possible to conserve water.
Yeah. Apparently they've been going through a 7-year drought, and they're still having issues with rain. So, and then there's also some people that are on Steemit that farm in Australia as well, that are experiencing a lot of drought type stuff as well. So, looking into different possibilities as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important. That's one of the things that drew me to aquaponics was the watering aspect of it, because I tried my hand at gardening first, and it was always a major task to water everything.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
And then not even considering the cost of doing it, from the city water supply. But when I go back and look at it, and I look at people watering their garden with city water, I'm thinking, you're killing the biosphere that's supposed to be working for you. All of the natural bacteria in the soil is being killed by the chlorinated water.
Yeah.
So, you're making things worse, not better. And that's why you're having to add chemical fertilizers all the time, because, you're not getting the natural components that you need.
Yeah, the microbiome in the soil is just being depleted by that chlorine, and not only that, that chlorine in the water, that chlorine is also getting on your skin, and you're inhaling it if you're taking baths and showers in that water as well.
You have no choice if you're you got a hot shower, you got steam, you're inhaling all that stuff, and there's other halides and stuff in the water too that it's not commonly known. But every year they have to have a report that comes out for your local water supply, and you'll get a mailer that'll come out to you. Open that thing up and look at it. I mean, really just take some time and look at it, because you'll be astonished at the kind of stuff that they check for. I mean, there's literally hundreds of things.
Yeah.
And then you'll think, well, there's no way there's radioactive, this, that, and the other. And then you'll look over there and it'll be so many parts per million, and
right. Yep.
And at certain levels it's okay, but the main culprits here are fluoride and chlorine.
Yeah, those are the two big ones. Something I learned recently is that chloride and that chlorine can actually constrict your blood vessels, and so it's something I've noticed in my friends, is that they've had their fathers have passed away early, and some of them have been while they're in the shower, and it's just like
while they're in the shower, yeah.
So
the skin, you think about it, the skin is the largest organ. And skin absorbs a lot. So some of these vasodilators or whatever, they open up the pores, they open up the blood vessels, and then in comes the halides.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's a whole other rabbit hole.
Right. But yeah, I mean, we got comments in the audience as well. Is that Maiko says that food's really expensive now, and then you go try to buy a bell pepper in the store, and he's like, "Man, these people are crazy." So yeah, it's another one of those things. If you're just starting to grow your own food, you can start saving some money and just start small.
Save money, but I have to say this too. There's a big thing out there where there's a lack of appreciation for what it takes to grow food.
Right.
Because people don't understand what it takes to get there, to have that bell pepper or to have that piece of lettuce. And so they don't put any value on it. I would rather pay more money for something that's organically grown. If I've got a choice and I'm looking at an organic head of lettuce over here and a non-organic head of lettuce, and there's $1 difference between the two, I'm going to buy the organic. Because provided that I know it's organic and it's not just some faux label. There's been some of that going around too with chains that label stuff organic. It's not organic.
Right. But, yeah, we're getting lots of pictures of coming in the chat of vertical farming, and it's that's going to be a big way that people are going to be able to create a ton of production, is to start growing vertically.
The guy that's got the patent on those vertical growers. Those PVC square tubes with the slit going down.
Yeah.
He grows all of his stuff aquaponically.
Yeah. The one of the big companies that I think what you're talking about is the Zipgrow Towers, and it's a company called
Zipgrow.
It's a company called Bright Agrotech, and I think they're out of Wyoming.
Right.
And so since they grow in the desert area in Wyoming, that they need some kind of water recycling method of growing, and so they've been growing indoors very successfully using like LED lighting and those towers and everything like that. And so
he grows aquaponically too. He keeps his fish in a controlled environment room with no light unless he controls the light, and they do that specifically to control breeding and to cut back on costs for lighting the room. But your fish don't necessarily have to have light, thrive and grow, but I find that it seems to be beneficial for them as far as their demeanor and the way they act towards you and everything else. So
right, but there are some downsides. So I got some more comments. We got T Fame saying that farmers are really trying. It takes tactics, time, and effort. And one of the things that is a little bit in the vertical farming and growing this way is that your upfront cost is more than going out and just doing traditional farming. But for me, the combination of like permaculture gardening with soil and bringing in things like wood chips and things like that, and planting in that, and building your soil up, that aquaponics is another complement to that, where you can keep
you can use the aquaponics in a small system and build up the soil around the system.
And you also have the ability to grow indoors and grow 365 days a year. And so
right.
And so while the outside
is, and you can get a lot
thing.
of abundance in a small area, and that I can't overemphasize that. I mean, you don't have to have some huge football field size area. You can have something literally 20 by 20 and have so much stuff growing that you can't stand it. I mean, it's just, you'll be amazed at how much stuff you can grow. And as a matter of fact, whoever's processing the food will be going, what the crap's going on here? I'm working myself to death.
Yeah. So Breeze just had a comment that she wished she could come walk through your aquaponics system. So that's another thing that
I had recently moved, and I'm just getting my system back up and running. The stuff that I've been showing today was from my previous setup.
Yeah.
And I've expanded from there, and I've actually got better at it since then. But
If you guys like this, content, make sure to leave a comment when the show recording is up. And I'd like to get with Robbie and actually do some videos together with him. So if enough people, there's a lot of interest in that, then can get some more.
And we'd like
video
to
content
break this thing down into individual build sections, show you how to do these things, and kicking around the idea of doing classes. But I do have to have my setup going so that, it's established and running, and I don't have people saying, well, I can't envision what you're saying here. They can look at it and see it.
Right. Yeah. So Breeze says, yes, I want the videos. So there we go.
Well, I mean, that's definitely something we need to work on. You and I, Greg, we've been kicking that around. We need to get off the duff and make it happen.
Heck yeah, we'll make it happen. So yeah, we're at these raised beds. We got to that point. If you wanna keep working on through, we got about 12 minutes left in the show here, so we could maybe wrap up with this week on maybe the raised bed or the bed part of the system, and then
and then maybe next week I could show the filters or something. I've got a whole other section on how to build the filters and the tanks, and I know we just briefly went over it at the beginning, but I just wanted to show how the system kind of went together. The main thing is to get it in everybody's head about the nitrogen cycle.
Yeah, that was good to cover that this show, and hopefully
once you understand that you're on your way. What we'll do next time is we can maybe show the filter tanks being built, and then talk about the water chemistry and how that works.
That sounds good.
Yeah. So that'll be another component of it. I think if we had to do this thing from scratch with a course and somebody come out, they'd have to have a book in their hand, and it'd probably be a 3-day deal, 2 or 3 day thing, hands-on, and see it. But
yeah, absolutely. I think that would be the best way too, is to actually physically go to a workshop and as well to get your hands on this kind of stuff too.
Yeah. Because you can, lean around the thing and see how it's connected versus this. Okay, all right. Well, let's get back to these grow beds here. Let's see if I have something showing I tell you what we need to do. Let's talk about the bell siphon.
Okay.
Let me close this out, and I'm going to go to a different thing and share that. Okay. Let's go to the bell siphon and new share.
All right, that's coming in really nice and clear there.
Now, you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what we have here in the grow bed, after you get it built and you get your gravel in there and you got your liner, then you're going to have to build this bell siphon. And I think I picked on the wrong thing here. Come on now. Escape. Sorry, guys.
No problem.
Like I said, this is some kind of a... All right, do you see the full screen with the...
Yep.
I don't know.
Yes, sir. It's
all
coming,
right, now
coming
you
in well there.
see the cutaway with all the arrows?
Oh, yeah. Yep. It's coming in.
Okay. So what we have here is the bell siphon setup is designed so that the water level that comes up on the gravel will come up to our zone 1 and keep it dry, and then will drain away. And if you'll look at the top of what's called the stand pipe, right here where my cursor is, you'll see that it's about an inch or so below the gravel line.
Okay.
See that? So, and you'll want to put these pipes in before you put the gravel in, obviously. So what you'll do is you'll put your bulkhead fitting in first, drill out your hole, put your standpipe in, and what I generally do is I take a level or a board, lay it across the grow bed, and then I measure down about 2 inches because you're going to have about an inch before it gets to the top, then another inch for the dry zone.
Okay.
I'll stick my pipe in, butt it up with a board, and then measure down 2 inches and mark that, cut it off, and do the same thing with the 3-inch pipe.
Yeah.
The bells.
So is there a reasoning behind, going from 1.5 inches to 3 inches? Is that the optimal setting for that?
Yes, now I've done multiple setups where I tried 2 inches and 1 inch and 1.5 inches and and all this stuff, and this is the one that I found that works best. Now, you can make them larger. Here's the trick to a bell siphon. The bell siphon depends on the flow rate of the water feeding into it.
Okay.
So if you have a large bell siphon with a 2-inch standpipe and a 4-inch bell, then you're going to have to feed it more water to make it shut on at a faster rate.
Okay.
Because what happens is water comes up. Again, you see my cursor? The water comes up the bell and tips over the standpipe and starts flooding down into the standpipe. Now it hits the elbow down here at the bottom and starts bunching up because it can't turn as fast as it's pouring in.
Right.
When that happens, the bell will then create a little small air pocket right here at the top, and then that air pocket will get sucked down the pipe. And when the air pocket gets sucked down the pipe, then it has a straight water vacuum or a siphon. And since the slot is down here at the bottom for the bell, it will not shut off until it runs out of water feeding it.
Okay.
So when you're feeding water into your grow bed, if you're going in too fast, the bell will not shut off. If you're going in too slow, the bell won't initiate.
Okay. So you have to really dial the flow rate.
It's all a correlation of the flow rate going into it. So it's really easy to solve this. All you do is put a valve on the pipe coming into the grow bed.
Okay.
And that way you can dial it back. You can put, more or less in there. And you'll hit a spot. And I generally go about 3/4 of the way on the valve. But you'll hit a spot, and this thing will automatically just shut on and turn off. Shut on and turn off. And what you want to do is on your bell, you'll want to come up about 1 inch from the bottom of the bell pipe itself, and you'll cut a notch out on both sides of the notch so that water can get into it.
Okay.
And you'll have your bell the same height as the standpipe, identical. Put one of those rounded caps on it, and what that does is it creates a small gap between the standpipe and the cap. And your idea there is to have the air bubble small at the top instead of this great old big. And if you run the bell pipe way up here, then you're going to have a big air bubble that has to get pulled down the pipe for it to start.
So you want that to be pretty close to the height,
fairly close,
of your inner standpipe.
Right. If not exactly, very close to it. Don't make it lower because it'll hit right here. It can be a little bit higher. It could be an 1/8 or 3/16 higher, and it'll still work. But optimally, if you cut them off at the same level, right across there, and you put the cap on, by the time you push the cap down, you're going to have your 1/8 gap. And then right here, you're going to wind up with close to 3/16 to 1/2, which is perfect.
Yeah. And so this is one of the ways that you can pump into your raised beds, and it will bring the water level to a certain height and drain it without having to have any kind of electronics or anything like that.
No electronics, no electricity, no nothing. It's all dependent on the water and gravity. And the dry zone between the top of the gravel and how far down is entirely dependent on the height of the standpipe.
Okay. Gotcha.
So if you want to lower that down, you can pull this out and cut this off. And you'll have to cut the bale as well, you know, and bring it down. But that'll lower your down and make a larger dry zone. I generally keep my dry zone about 3/4 to 1 inch.
Okay.
And that's really all you need, just enough to keep the sunlight away from the water.
Okay. Cool. To prevent that algae, yeah.
Right, prevent the algae.
And then you
the
have
algae's going to rob. Go ahead.
And then you have the shield that goes over the whole thing to keep debris and other stuff from getting in there, right?
Right. Now the general rule of thumb is it's double. So 1.5 pipe, 3-inch pipe, 6-inch pipe.
Gotcha.
And the 6-inch pipe, now I have found that cutting slots is vastly more efficient than cutting or drilling holes. The holes will clog up, and when the holes clog up, guess what? The standpipe can't get enough water, and it shuts off before it drains all the way down.
Okay. All right. Well, we might want to wrap it up here. We got a couple minutes left for the show today. Robbie, thank you for being here to do the show with me today and sharing your expertise in aquaponics. So maybe we'll stop here and then we'll pick it back up next time with from this spot.
Yeah, sure. And I know this is a lot of information, guys, and I'm just kind of cramming it in. We can get a lot more detail with it, but, you know. So
Absolutely.
I apologize for cramming it in and everything, but hopefully this will give you an idea of how the systems work and why you set it up the way you do. So.
Yep. So, yeah, thank you again. Thank you, everybody in the audience, for your great questions this week. I really appreciate you guys interacting on the show and being a part of it. And so we'll be back next week. I'll either be here or I will be attending the conference in Arkadelphia. Please stay tuned for next show. We have Steamwave Saturday coming up with Crimson Clad that goes over all your questions that you may have about the Steam ecosystem and some of the things that are going on here. So, again, thank you so much for joining, and I really appreciate y'all. We'll catch you guys next time. Peace. All right, brother. That was great.
All righty, man.
Yes.
Are we off air?
Well, we're probably
Not yet.
we should be off air. So I'm right now. I'm working on pulling out my stream and everything like that. Breeze says, "Remember to make videos." Yeah. so that's great. Yeah, we should.
Man, this is just basic essential information, and nobody's putting it out there like that. I don't think. I haven't seen it. If they have, they're putting out a lot of stuff, but they're not going over the nitrogen stuff and the way it works with the system.
Right. Yeah. So it's good information, man, and the people are really loving it. They're really eating it up there. So look pretty good.
Maybe maybe you got like a thing where they'll be like, well, we're tuning in next time to see what's going on. So.
Yeah. So I had a bunch of people want to get notified about the show. So and then a bunch of people said great show. So that was great. Awesome show, guys. And remember to make videos. Great show. I demand it. I demand the videos. Great show. Cool. That's great.
Well, I don't know if this thing recorded or not, man. I don't see a button that says stop recording, but
so whenever you end the meeting, it should get back on there. So
okay. So I mean, I was a little concerned. I couldn't see anything that you were doing, and I didn't know if what I was showing was actually coming through or not.
Yeah, it was. Some of these things. I can't tell what's going on the website because I can't have all those windows open either. Right. Yeah, but Rondon was there working that issue in the background. And that was yeah, we're off air.
I'm gonna engage in a libation.